In the know, non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
All right, Vikings Vent Line, another trip around the room here with my guys Nick and John about to join here in just a little bit on Purple Daily. Vikings Vent Line is a year-round show. We took the Vikings Vent Line format, of course, from the radio days, transitioned it obviously to the podcast and YouTube days. And after every Vikings game, Mackie, Judd, and myself like to go live and bring on a bunch of Vikings fans to talk about the game. Whether that's good or bad, it's a safe space for any Vikings fan to come on the show. And then we took that idea and we even morphed it to this edition, the off-season edition, where I like to bring on Vikings fans, kind of talk about the upcoming season, talk about the off-season. So if this is a show that you'd like to be a part of, whether it's for the first time or a repeat guest, hit me up. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. That's vikingsventline@gmail.com for the audio audience as well. We're like 6 weeks, give or take, from the NFL regular season already. We're in the holiday weekend, and the dog days of the offseason, but there's still plenty to talk about, of course, with the upcoming season and the offseason moves that have taken place. So hit me up if you want to get on. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Of course, hit the subscribe button for daily Vikings entertainment. We got some historical pie charts coming your way this week as well after this episode post, so be on the lookout for that. All right, let's get my guys in here. Let's get Nicholas in here. Let's get John. Boys, welcome to Vent Line. Appreciate you coming on. Nick, you were telling me off mic, you discovered Vent Line after that infamous, I believe, Sunday night football game, or was it a Monday night football game?
I think it was a Monday night game, 2019, against the Seahawks. Found you guys then. The infamous, we couldn't get the fourth down, 4th and inches to seal the game. And I found Vent Line that night, and I've been listening ever since. It's actually my first time on the show, though. So I've been like that guy who just reads all the messages in the group chat, never texts. So I'm happy to be on. It's been a long time coming, but I'm definitely stotted.
Yeah, we'll see what Alexander Maskin can do this season. We might even get into that a little bit here later on in the episode, no doubt. And John, you said you discovered us recently, right? You just discovered us in the last 5 months, you said?
Yeah, I just discovered you guys pretty recently. I live in Wisconsin, so I was looking to listen to something more Minnesota sports-wise. So I got you guys on Spotify. But yeah, fairly new listener, but been a Vikings fan for a long time.
John, where in Wisconsin are you at?
Appleton.
Appleton. Okay, yep. So you're deep in Packer territory there, aren't you?
Oh yeah, real deep.
Did you grow up in Wisconsin the whole time, or did you move there?
Yeah, so I grew up here. I've lived here my entire life. I became a Vikings fan when I was 5. Just loved me some Randy Moss and the uniforms, and I was like, I'm a part of this. So
you joined the good side.
Fun. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude, you are deep in enemy territory there. So, so it's good for you for being on the Vikings side of things, I guess. Hey, Nick, where are you from?
So I'm from Judd's neck of the woods, actually, St. Louis Park.
Okay.
Grew up there my whole life. So I was just kind of born into Vikings fandom. My grandfather saw all 4 Super Bowl losses. My dad's had his fair share of heartbreaks, and it was only right that, I kind of followed suit.
Nice. Well, welcome to the show, boys. This is a safe space. So whether it's for tears or whether it's for venting or whether it's just for optimism, even, that's what Vikings Vent Line is all about. So with us being kind of in this thickest part of the offseason, training camp's like a couple weeks away, but this is really the only true, what I like to call dead period of the NFL offseason, where we're just kind of waiting. It's a holiday weekend. People are out and kind of focusing off football or off sports and off certain things. So I like to kick this one around during this part of Vent Line every year. So Nick, I'm going to actually start with you, my man. I want to know, what is your hottest Vikings take? Whether it's for this season, a past take, I just would love to know Nick's hottest Vikings take. Go.
My hottest Vikings take. Kevin O'Connell will bring the Vikings their first Super Bowl. I don't know if it's this season or if it's in the future, but I look back at last year and I absolutely love that hire. I think, 13 wins in your first season, that doesn't happen by chance. Those 11 one-score games, you could say maybe we got a little lucky and won a little more games than we should have, but I think that doesn't happen without Kevin O'Connell. I mean, you just saw the difference between when Zimmer was there in his last year and the first year of KOC, and it was night and day. I mean, those guys were loose, having fun. He unlocked a new version of Kirk that we'd never really seen before, this game-winning, just daggering Kirk who would, come up, I think, 8 game-winning drives last year. And so that gives me hope going forward, whether it's with Kirk or another quarterback. I think he's going to get the best out of, whatever we end up doing. If it's a young quarterback he wants to kind of get his hands on and mold, I just think it's a smash hire, and I think we're on the right track definitely with Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, it just there's definitely a different persona and energy about him, right? I mean,
Yep.
I liked Mike Zimmer. I agree things got a little stale at the end there, and it was time to move on. But it just seems like whether it's his personality or whether it's just him being with the times and having a top 5 offense and being around the Rams who have won a Super Bowl too, I think that's also really helpful. Like sometimes people take chances on these coordinators that are just kind of wonderkins and they're fine, but they haven't really been to the top of the mountain. Kevin O'Connell has, of course, as a coach. And, as a player, he was a fringe player, but knew he was going to be in coaching right away. And obviously, if he's the first guy to bring this franchise a Super Bowl, I mean, he's going to be obviously etched in stone and be one of the greatest coaches, not just in Vikings history, but I think in NFL history too.
You can tell the players ride or die with him, man. Like those relationships that he's built with them. I just think he's going to be the guy to do it for us. I love him.
Love it. All right, John. So that was Nick's hot take. He says KOC is the first coach to lead the Vikings to the Super Bowl. What do you got for me? What's your hottest Vikings take?
So mine's a little bit more season specific and even like position specific, but I think Greg Joseph will not be the Vikings kicker by the end of the year.
Ooh.
Okay.
So my reasoning for that, obviously his struggles have been well documented, with mostly PATs, but also with his kicks. The fact that they brought in Jack Podlesny from Georgia, I mean, he was undrafted, but still he's on the roster as of now. I could see him being added to the practice squad at the end of training camp because I doubt he would beat out Joseph, at least at this point. And I think even if it was a close competition, the coaching staff would lean more towards having a guy with some NFL experience as opposed to none. So, but just with Joseph's struggles last year and even the year before, I could definitely see him getting cut and them going with Podlesny or even somebody else. Now, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he has a better year to where, he can actually make more extra points, but it's honestly concerning. If you look at the fact that in that Cardinals game this past year, he missed that 56-yarder that actually went off a defender's helmet, and he missed the PAT. So it was actually a lot closer of a game than it should have been if he just made his kicks. Now, he can make some clutch kicks, like against the Giants and the Colts, but it's also to the fact to where, if he just made some PATs, maybe we wouldn't need such clutch kicks. So I know it's hard trying to cut a kicker mid-season and bring in a new one, especially like Podlesny, who has no NFL experience. But sometimes you just have to go with somebody else because Joseph just seems to struggle a lot.
Well, John, I know you said you're newish to Purple Daily, so I'm not sure if you're aware that I was like the biggest maybe the only, not the biggest, the only Greg Joseph stan last year for the Vikings, trying to defend this guy. I'm not sure if you're aware of this.
I kind of got that vibe. I got that vibe in the last few months.
Yeah. So, I mean, my reasoning here was, I mean, it was cheeky a little bit, but, he missed a lot of extra points, but none of his kicks cost the Vikings games necessarily last year. He was mostly money from inside 50 yards, past 50 yards. That was an issue. And now we're seeing kickers just kind of routinely making 50 yards. I feel like 10 years ago, it wasn't the case, but now like you need your kicker to make a couple 50-yard kicks every season and also not just be a complete 50-50 guy like Greg Joseph was on them. The extra points thing is so bizarre because to your point, if he was making extra points and maybe he was still struggling with the 50-plus yarders, I think we'd give him a little bit more of a pass, right? Because it's a damn extra point. Like just make the extra point. And if you're 50-50 or batting less than, 80% on those 50-yard kicks, all right. If you're money from inside 50 and the extra points, you can give a guy a little bit of a pass there. So, I mean, the fact they brought in Podlesny, there is going to be a competition here. I think Greg Joseph wins this battle. But are you kind of 50-50 on that right now? Or do you think that Podlesny could actually win the job in training camp this summer?
So I've heard Podlesny's look pretty good. I mean, that's in, shorts and OTAs. So how much can you really judge? Yeah. I'm sure we'll get to see him in some preseason games. But I think they'd lean towards Joseph. For one, he has NFL experience. And the fact that Matt Daniels seems to really like Greg Joseph.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have like that DePaulo Wright and his connection, which is an underrated connection, I think, that long snapper holder kicker connection. So I think they would go with Joseph if it's close, but I could just see a change coming mid-season if Joseph really starts to struggle, because Joseph is really good last year, at least 20 to 50 yards, but PATs he struggled, and then plus 50 he was below 50%. So it's really like the PATs. I think honestly in like 5-ish years, if not sooner, I think PATs won't really be a thing anymore. I think 2-point conversions are going to take over, especially guys who think like O'Connell and McVay. They tend to probably want to go with that because I think statistically you probably have a pretty good shot of making a 2-point conversion. But I just think that with Joseph's struggles right now, even though he does have a guaranteed contract, it's only 1.7, I believe. But if a guy's struggling that bad, then it's costing games. He's not gonna be around. So.
Absolutely. Nick, do you have any Greg Joseph takes here?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, you think of the Giants game, that 62-yard game winner, but every now and then he'll just miss a gimme kick. And you just hope it doesn't come to a point where it's in an NFC playoff game and he's missing a PAT to cost you. I can kind of see it both ways. I know Podlesny's had some big kicks, in high leverage college football games with Georgia, obviously, but I think, of the things that really hurt us last year, I don't know that I'm kind of like Declan. I don't think I'd put Greg Joseph towards the top of that list, but I hear your reasoning, man. I think having two good kickers to kind of push each other is always great. If Greg Joseph starts to struggle, get him out of there, man. I mean, if he's got someone breathing right down his neck, that's kicking well in camp and kind of making him work for it, I think that's only good for us in the long run. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I see your logic though, John. It could definitely be a battle in training camp, and or if, like you said, if Greg Joseph does get the job, he could get replaced midseason. So we'll have to see.
All right, boys, let's continue on the offensive front. I'm curious what your expectations are for rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison. So the Vikings take him with the 21st pick. You add another wide receiver into this weapon or this offense who's going to be a good weapon. And, he's not expected maybe to step in right away and be the number one guy. So I guess, Nick, were you a fan of that pick? And also, I guess, what are your expectations for the rookie wide receiver?
Yeah, so I love the pick. I know there's some people that want us to go defense, but I look at what Jordan Addison is good at, and it's separating, intricate route running. He's just a smooth route runner that can get open. And I think Kevin O'Connell is just he's going to find ways to get him the ball, and it'll take pressure off of Jefferson too. So I thought it was a smash pick. I thought he was going to come in right away and produce, but I am concerned with, whatever the injury may be that kept him out of OTAs, minicamp. That concerns me a little bit now, just because I think those reps with Kirk Cousins, getting the timing and chemistry down, that's valuable, even if it's only for a couple like training sessions. I know Rodgers missed all of that last season. We saw how that worked with his receivers. So I'm a little concerned. I don't know if he comes out guns blazing, Addison, probably not. KJ Osborne's still a stud. I love me some KJ Osborne. He's really going to have to show something to get that wide receiver 2 job. But I think kind of like what we saw with Jefferson in his breakout year, that Tennessee game, I think he'll just come on, when his time comes. It might be in the middle of the season. It might be right away, but I am a little concerned with the lack of, reps with Kirk to this point.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with training camp, and I think we'll obviously get a better probably gauge of where he's at, and hopefully, he's up to speed, and the injuries behind him, and he can kind of get acclimated in this offense pretty quick. John, how about you? When you saw that pick come down, were you a fan of it, and what are your expectations, I guess, for him in this kind of loaded Vikings offense?
Yeah, I was a big fan of the pick. I really liked his route running ability. Everything I saw of him at USC, I really liked. I was honestly hoping number 1 for Jackson Smith-Njigba. But I mean, Addison is definitely a great, capable wide receiver. To Nick's point, yeah, I'm a little concerned about his injury, and the fact that he hasn't been getting any work in with Kirk Cousins. It's a little concerning. I don't think it's detrimental, but it's definitely something to note. As far as like how I think he would do this season, I think he'd probably be like 4th or 5th option on the team as of right now. because obviously you got JJ, TJ, and KJ, who I would all assume would have more receptions than him. And then even a guy like Jalen Naylor, who's been kind of hanging on the roster for a couple seasons now and who looked pretty good in that Packers game last year. He could even have a bigger impact than Addison. So I'll be really interested to see what happens in training camp with him and how he looks in some preseason games because, I don't know what this injury is like, but I just want him to get as many reps as possible with Kirk Cousins because obviously chemistry is very important. So if I were to guess, I think he'd probably be like 4th or 5th in receptions by the end of the year. Hopefully, if this injury heals.
Yeah, as long as he's like a complementary piece, right, to this offense, I think that's all we can ask for. And whether that was a reach or whether there was maybe better options at 21, I guess we'll kind of wait and see. But I like that he's not going to have to step in and be like the number one dude right away. I think that really helps because if that was the case and he had to be the number one option and now he's already behind schedule, I don't think the panic button slapped, but you obviously could panic a lot more, a lot more basically. So hopefully he gets up to speed here. Nick, what's your thoughts on Alex Mattison getting the starting job here? I know you were upset when he didn't get that 1 yard. Do you think he can be a capable starting back?
I think he can. I know that was the moment that kind of brought me to Purple Daily, but I do have faith in Mattison. I think, he just kind of needs, we've always said he could be the second best running back in the division when we had Dalvin and Mattison, third, I guess, Aaron Jones. But I think he's going to benefit from having, he's going to get more carries. I think he's really going to he'll be used in the passing game. I think he's got a little bit of catching ability too. I'm a little concerned, and it makes sense to go to, running back by committee approach now. I'm a little bit concerned though with the big play upside. I look back at Dalvin Cook last year and he had a lot of, inefficient runs on 1st and 2nd down where he's not getting many yards. But I think of some of those close games that we were able to win, and those are some pretty splashy plays that Cook was able to give us. I think of like the 80-yard run against Buffalo. He broke one in the Miami game to kind of seal it, and that one-handed catch against Washington, I believe. And I don't know if we're going to be missing that a lot. I don't know. I get it from Kwesi's standpoint. You can't pay a running back that much money, especially an older one that's beat up. So I think maybe Mattison kind of lacks in the big play ability that Dalvin Cook had that. But I think overall, if we're kind of just a little more efficient, not getting behind the sticks on early downs, I think we'll do just fine. And, I trust KOC to kind of get him involved how he needs to and run this offense efficiently. And I think we'll be okay. It's just those big plays. I don't know if we'll have as many of those with Mattison.
John, do you like Alex Mattison as the starting back? And do you think maybe there is a home run gear to him that maybe he has lacked in previous seasons?
Yeah, I actually am excited to watch Mattison. I think the fact that he is on a 2-year deal for $7.5 million is a pretty good deal. I think there's teams out there that probably pay more for a running back like him. Honestly, what I'm most excited about is just kind of this running back by committee now that the Vikings are going to have. Over the past, few years, it's just felt like they've had to force feed Dalvin Cook, even going back to like the Zimmer days, just because you have this top 5, top 3 running back on your team. So you feel the need to give him the ball a lot. I think that right there is a good reason that they're going to go to this running back by committee with Mattison and McBride and Chandler all in the running back room. And you just look at the rest of the NFL and you see so many teams going back to this running back by committee, and like no teams are with this bell cow running back anymore. So, I mean, the most recent NFL champions don't have a bell cow running back who makes $10+ million a year. It'll just be nice to see all these different guys compete in the backfield, as opposed to Dalvin Cook, who would have like 5 runs for a total of 2 yards and then 1 run for 60 yards. I like Dalvin Cook, but paying him more than probably $4 million a year at this point is not a good investment.
Last thing here on the defensive side, what are your expectations for Brian Flores here? I mean, let's assume Danielle Hunter is indeed reporting and on this team too. We'll see what happens there. But Nick, do you think Brian Flores can kind of take this defense and revamp it? Is it going to be a slow process? How do you kind of look at that?
I think he can. I think, we can't get much worse from last year. We're getting younger, faster. I love that Brian Flores hire initially. I think he's going to bring some freaking exotic blitzes, and it's just going to be nonstop pressure. I mean, if we can get a couple more turnovers a game, hits on the QB, some scoop and score fumbles, whatever it is, if we're just causing chaos, I like that. As opposed to, last year it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was just so frustrating watching us sit back and just give up yards and yards and yards. I think the one thing is, I like you said, I think Daniil is coming back. I don't know that Flores would take this job if he knew that both Za'Darius and Daniil would be gone. And I'm excited to see what he does with Daniil. I think Daniil, assuming we keep him, I think he's going to be firing again. I could see him, towards the top of the league leading in sacks. I'm just excited in general, just for a younger, faster, more aggressive defense. It's going to be chaos. So I'm stoked. I love the hire too.
Nice. John, how about you? Do you think Brian Flores can kind of turn around this defense? What are your expectations for him?
Yeah, absolutely. When the hire came out, I was pretty excited. I was a little worried he was going to take a head coaching spot, but I'm glad he took this D coordinator spot, even if it's basically just a 1-year hire. Just the amount of improvements he can make for this defense, and just him with his history, especially being with the Patriots for such a long time. I think he's almost the perfect guy to have with our young defensive backs. So, I mean, kind of like Nick said, it can't get much worse than last year defensively. So, I mean, as long as the Vikings, I think, are in the top 20 for a scoring defense, I think that's a big improvement. And I can only assume this offense will be top 5, if not top 7, at least. So just hold them under probably 30, 35 points, and they'll probably win most games. But I'm pretty excited to watch guys like Andrew Booth and Caleb Evans, hopefully healthy, just like Scene, and just see how they produce under a guy like Flores and Daniil Hunter. It's pretty frustrating last year watching Donatel put Daniil Hunter in zone coverage, especially against Christian Watson. I turned the game off after that. So I'm just excited to watch a guy who knows what he's doing with probably a Hall of Fame edge rusher and just other pieces that'll be added to this defense.
No doubt. Boys, before we wrap up here on Vikings Vent Line, Nick, do you got any last takes? Do you have any shout outs you'd love to give? If you do, fire away, my guy.
So it's another hot take, but I really think the NFC is there for the taking. I mean, I think the Vikings, the way we've handled the offseason, I think, from the outside looking in, it may seem like we're kind of tearing it down and rebuilding. We're getting rid of these veteran players, but I don't think any of the losses make you that much worse than you were last year. And there is a path where, and I know people think, obviously, Philadelphia, San Francisco, they've kind of had a stranglehold on the conference. But if you get, the quarterback position in San Francisco is kind of up in the air. I haven't really bought into Brock Purdy yet. If you get like a Jalen Hurts injury or something, it just breaks open. There's a path there for the Vikings to take it. I'm not buying the Lions hype. I mean, Dan Campbell, great. He's a great quote, but he's going to cost you a game at some point with his decision making. I don't know. I think there is a path there for the Vikings to maybe not repeat 13-3 like last year, but I can definitely see us, as one of the top 3 or 4 seeds and making a run at this thing. I think, like I said, the defense can't get any worse. So in the offense, Kirk Cousins, another year with the same coordinator. Justin Jefferson is arguably the best player in the whole conference. I think there is a way for us to, maybe bring it home. I don't know I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I can definitely see a path there for a Vikings NFC championship run. But other than that, I'll shout you, Mackie and Judd out. I love the show. I'm along for the ride. I just want to see this Super Bowl. I hope my grandpa and my dad and everyone else can see it. Love what you guys do here, and I'm just stoked that I was able to come on today.
Appreciate it, man. John, how about you, buddy? Last takes. Any shout outs you'd love to give here on Vikings Vent Line?
Yeah, just my last take. I'm just excited for the season to start. I'm honestly excited to see how Kirk Cousins plays, considering he doesn't have to learn a whole new offense again. He's a little more comfortable this time around. So hopefully we see some big things from him. Other than that, just to see how the defense improves. and just to see how well we can do, because they got a tough schedule, no doubt. But as far as shout outs, just shout out to some of my friends who are Viking fans over here with me. My mom's a Vikings fan too, so that's usually I watch the games with. And then shout out to you guys. Thanks for having me on, and keep producing great content.
Appreciate it, John. Nick, thank you so much too, boys. Appreciate you guys discovering and listening to Vikings Vent Line. Again, if anyone wants to come on a future episode, hit me up. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. vikingsventline@gmail.com. Some historical pie charts too coming your way over the 4th of July weekend. Or week, I should say. So hit that subscribe button for daily Vikings entertainment. We'll be back tomorrow.